Well, we know for certain Oregon's going to the Big Ten championship game. But do we feel good about Oregon going to the Big Ten championship game no matter what?
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, where you can get a big return. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Bryce Boettcher and the linebackers, plus some other chatter and evaluations there. I'll keep evaluating other position groups as well amidst the bye week, and a couple of recruiting nuggets, one of which I'll just tell you right now, you won't love, but it's not all bad news yet. All coming up on today's show. But should Oregon feel good? Should Oregon they didn't play great against Maryland. They scraped by Wisconsin. Now they go into a bye week, and they've clinched a spot in the Big Ten championship game. Overall, the answer is yes. But should it be an unwavering confidence from Oregon fans to the point where it doesn't matter who we play? Well, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't matter. Ohio State, Indiana. Ohio State lost their starting center for the year. That stinks. We, of course, know how hard injuries can be to deal with. I mean, my most watched show of the week was Tez Johnson returning from injury yesterday, because that's, of course, big news for the Ducks. But overall, it's hard to not feel really good about where Oregon is at. But that's because of the defensive side of the ball. If I were to give a grade, and I'm about to, overall this season, encompassing all 11 contests, which have gone by in the blink of an eye, I'd give the defense an A, and I'd give the offense a B. And by the way, I'm a tough grader. I'm very tough. C is not something that you should be ashamed of. There are players that start for Oregon who I'd say, yeah, they've been C this year. They've been average. They've been solid, respectable, or C+, slightly above average. But for Oregon going into this Big Ten championship game, which they have indeed clinched a spot in, the bye week comes at a great time, and you have the ability to try and get back to where the offense was. There is no get back to where the defense was. The defense feels like it keeps playing better and better as the season goes on, even though the numbers don't always reflect it. Remember, they pitched a shutout against Purdue. They only allowed 10 points against Michigan State. And then you looked up and went, 17 points against Michigan. Wait, that wasn't as well as the defense played, or at least that's how I looked at it. But my concerns on the defensive side of the ball, they're pretty much non-existent. And the concerns on the offensive side of the ball, they're there. They absolutely exist. But it's still, as I've talked about, first world problem sort of deal. So one of you asked me, well, how should Oregon feel going into the Big Ten championship game? It was Dragon Forge's animation studios, actually. Spencer, what is your confidence level looking ahead to the Big Ten championship game versus Ohio State or rising Indiana, should they beat Ohio State? Also, pure curiosity, who would you rather take for QB1? Dylan Gabriel, Bo Nix, or Marcus Mariota? I'm going with Marcus. Go look at Marcus's performance in big games, his Heisman season. Yeah, really good, through the air, on the ground, guided it all. So I'll take Marcus. I'd go Marcus, Bo, and Gabriel. And guess what? When Dylan Gabriel is a guy that you'd probably take third, which is some recency bias, because let's not just throw his Ohio State performance out the window, by the way, because he was absolute nails. One of the best games of his entire career, and the biggest game in the history of Autzen Stadium. And DG delivered. And it wasn't the rushing attack, which was fine, as I've talked about in the last couple of weeks. The rushing attack is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not carrying Oregon's offense. So when the passing attack pulls back a little bit, well, suddenly the other aspects, the defense, have to elevate. And that's kind of where my only back of the mind concern of sorts is for Oregon. The defense has been so good this year. Yeah, the Boise State game happened early in the year. If those two teams play again, you think that game plays out the same way? I don't. Good teams, great programs, they get better over the course of the season. Oregon has certainly had that on the defensive side of the ball this year and on the offensive side as well. But Oregon's defense has won them games, Oregon's including but not limited to the Wisconsin game, and they have been the more consistent side of the ball. What I wonder about is what happens if the defense has an off day? They committed 12 penalties against Maryland. Well, that was against Maryland. That's a team that's finishing towards the bottom of the Big Ten. What if they have that sort of day? Is the offense ready? Is it going to look against Washington like the offense that could score 30 to 40 points every week, that should score 30 to 40 points every week? Or is it going to be one that still isn't quite in sync and the passing game isn't there and the running game is good, but it's not explosive? That's something that I'm absolutely looking for. So confidence level overall, 9.3, not 9.3 out of 10. This is where we're at. Like, that's a legitimate concern, but overall, the defense is so good. I just don't really have any worries on that side of the ball. By the way, I forgot to mention this on yesterday's show. I was going to, and then I forgot because I don't have a producer in my ear telling me, Spencer, you said you were going to do this, and then you did. So for my everydayers out there, 24 hours later, you can get this particular nugget. But Oregon wins on Saturday. The Big Ten doesn't announce until Tuesday. It took them until Tuesday to make sure there was no scenario in which Oregon couldn't make the Big Ten title game. But just to be clear, this has been clinched. So if you want to go to Indianapolis, I don't know if I'm going yet, so don't ask. I haven't decided. If you want to go to the game, book your ticket, book your flight. It's not going to get any less expensive. Probably the opposite, given how travel tends to work. But Oregon wins on Saturday, and the Big Ten wasn't locked, loaded, and ready to go with the graphic, and they tweeted out on Tuesday, Oregon clinched. So I'm like, what? What do you mean that? Well, yeah, the game was like 72 hours ago. What are we doing here, guys? What do we do? But that's how complicated it is. You have an 18-team conference, and you have to look at all the tiebreakers and all the this, that, and the other thing. Like, well, if Oregon loses, then they would have beaten Ohio State. But what if Ohio State loses to Indiana? Does Penn State get in? And the answer is no. The answer is unequivocally no, across the board. Oregon, win or lose against Washington, and they should absolutely win. They're a big favorite, and they deserve to be. They're going to the Big Ten championship game. So I thought that was funny. It just popped up on my Twitter feed on Tuesday, and I was like, why is this post from Saturday showing up right now on Tuesday? This is being sent out on Tuesday? Oh, boy. But that's how complicated it was. Another question. We're getting through a lot of these today, and we can still get more in tomorrow and all of next week. So keep the questions coming. YouTube comments, X formerly known as Twitter, or become a Locked On Ducks insider. Link in the description below. Bobby said, I like what you said in your video today about being happy with the win. This was circled as a trap game all offseason. I did that. Everyone knows Camp Randall's a tough place to play, and the crowd was in it the whole time. I think this game is what we needed to go deep into the playoff. Need to know how to win these close games, and Dan and the boys have figured it out this year. Thanks, Spencer. Keep up the great work. Wasn't necessarily a question, more of a comment, but a comment that I thought was worth bringing up. Did Oregon need to remember how to win close games? I mean, on the one hand, if you're looking for a silver lining of that heart stopper, now that we know Oregon won the football game, sure. Sure, it's good to play a close game every now and then, be able to execute in high-pressure situations. As much as anything, I think special teams needed that. Because Atticus Sappington against Boise State, remember, missed an extra point. That's why Oregon needed the game-winning field goal in the first place rather than kneeling out the clock. But at home, he was kicking right in the middle of the field and drilled like a 20-something yarder. Those were pressure kicks. So I don't think the offense and defense needed to learn how to execute in key spots. They've been great situationally, particularly on defense. I can't get over the defense holding Wisconsin to 1 of 12 on third down. I don't care which Big Ten team you're playing. 1 of 12 is nuts. That's phenomenally awesome from a defensive coordinator standpoint. Shout out Tosh Lupoy and the rest of that staff. And Dan Lanning, of course. But for Atticus Sappington, this late in the year, I think that was the biggest confidence booster for me in that game after the defense. I certainly walked away feeling better about special teams than the offense in that matchup. But guess what? Sometimes that's how you win games. There are better defenses in this conference, and you're going to play lower scoring games, and you got to win it with defense and special teams. And guess what? Atticus Sappington looks like that sort of guy. So I don't think with the Idaho and the Boise State and the Ohio State games there that you could have that question. I don't even know if it mattered. Maybe a little. The whole, well, they haven't played a close game this year. What happens when they do? Well, Oregon doesn't have that problem, number one, because they've played 4 close games. And number 2, Atticus Sappington delivered. That guy should have Joe Lorig's confidence right now, the special teams coach. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments. How are you feeling going into the Big Ten championship game? Or hit me up on Twitter as well at McLaughlin CFB or at Locked On Ducks. Bryce Boettcher, man. Who doesn't love Bryce Boettcher? Dan Lanning says earlier this year he wishes he could have 50 Bryce Boettchers or some quote to that effect. How have the linebackers actually played this year? I have many thoughts on that, and that's coming up next. First, let's talk about Skylight Frame. Are you missing somebody this holiday season and want them to be a part of your festivities from afar? We've got the perfect gift for you. Skylight Frame is the touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will love. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. And it's really easy to use, which is great for someone like me who isn't actually tech savvy. I'm going home for Thanksgiving. My parents and grandparents will be there, and they'll ask me all sorts of questions. Why isn't this working? What? I don't actually know. I want things to be easy, and Skylight Frame does as well. You can add new photos straight from your phone, from anywhere. It only takes a tap on your phone to send new photos to a frame across the country. It's the fastest, easiest way to keep loved ones in the loop, and they'll feel so much more connected to you. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/college. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/college. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/college. And as always, we're talking to you about FanDuel because that's America's #1 sportsbook. Would you want to go to the Ohio State of sportsbooks? See what I did there? Would you want to go to the Texas of sportsbooks? The Penn State, the Indianas? No, you want to go to the Oregon of sportsbooks, and that is #1. Right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need. It's all in one place. You can live bet the NFL, so when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel.com, never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So another question came in from MJ0Bytes, who wants a shout out to Bryce Boettcher for his game this past week. Totally deserves it. Almost had the early interception. That was one of those plays against Wisconsin that was kind of a go either way moment and probably should have gone Oregon's way. And if it had, I think that game looks a lot different. And the difference between a good or a great team, or what's more commonly referred to as a winning team, and one that doesn't, is those are the differences between winning big and not winning big. Oregon was about 3 plays away from having a hefty lead. The long throw to Terrence Ferguson was a touchdown. The interception by Bryce Boettcher could have set up Oregon for another red zone drive. They got the stop anyway, of course, but then had to march down the field through the interception and the red zone interception. Those sorts of momentum plays, they all broke Wisconsin's way. In a pull-in upset, that's what you need sometimes. You got to go out there and get the breaks and have this play go your way and that play go your way. And they just felt like they kept going Wisconsin's way. Maybe it's because they were at home, the wind, the environment, whatever it was. Whatever it was, it's just the way that it went. But Bryce Boettcher can deserve a shout-out just about every single week. Like, it's so common for him to lead Oregon in tackles that when he does that, I'm just kind of like, well, yeah, that's Bryce. That's just Bryce out there making plays. And I don't think he's an NFL linebacker. He's already been drafted into the Houston Astros organization. Go to the Mariners. He'd be the new Franklin Gutierrez. But anyway, I think that he could play in the NFL, could get onto a roster. I mean, Troy Dye's still playing in the NFL, and I didn't think he necessarily had a prototypical NFL linebacker's body. I think Bryce has a higher ceiling professionally in Major League Baseball than he does in the NFL. But still, he's such... Did you know he played baseball, by the way? I don't know if I'm breaking that to you for the very first time. But every single week, he's such a steady presence. And I think really the whole linebacker room has been a steady presence. So I wanted to use this particular thought, which is a deserved one, that Bryce Boettcher deserves a shout out because he continues to play really good football, to kind of springboard into an evaluation of the whole position group. Because this is not exactly played out how I and others thought it would coming into the year. Jeff Bossa as Oregon's primary linebacker and leader and communicator and signal caller, that's gone exactly as planned. He got dinged up a little bit earlier in the year, but he looks to be healthy out there, making plays, and Boss's growth over the last couple of years has just been absolutely tremendous. And he's the unquestioned leader of that group. I thought he'd be starting alongside Justin Jacobs, because that's what it pretty much was last year when Jacobs got back healthy, which began at the Washington State game halfway through the season, and Jacobs looked really good. But early on in the season, felt like Justin Jacobs was not really making a lot of impact plays. And he doesn't always show up. He did have the interception against Maryland, so that showed up in the box score. But when I rewatch Oregon's games, and when I do that, I'll watch plays 2, 3, 4 times over. I think that he's doing a better job of being active for Oregon's defense. He's not necessarily involved in a particular tackle, but I should say he's not necessarily involved in a lot of tackles for Oregon. But earlier this season, it felt like he was getting pushed around a lot, or he was out of position, he just didn't look like he was quite right. But I feel like he's kind of stabilized himself. And yeah, if you said, hey, Spencer, who would you start in Oregon in a 4-2-5 look? I'd say Jeff Bossa and Bryce Boettcher. And then I'd have Devin Jackson rotate in, and I'd have Justin Jacobs rotate in. But I think Jacobs is a guy who deserves credit for playing better over the second half of the season. I don't know if Lanning's been asked a question about him because, again, he's not making a bunch of eye-popping stats in the box score. He's just kind of showing up and doing a lot of really solid things. And you need guys like that who are not only a non-negative, but just kind of a slight positive that aren't necessarily getting individual shout-outs on my Monday shows because they don't make a bunch of headline plays. So I think he's done a nice job. But Boettcher, a season ago, he was someone that burst onto the scene a little bit, and you're like, wait a minute, this guy's playing a bunch at the linebacker spot. Like, I know Justin Jacobs is out, but boy, I thought it'd be Jamal Hill. And instead it was Bryce Boettcher. And then this year, he thought it'd be Justin Jacobs, and instead it's Bryce Boettcher. He's just a guy who plays so hungry. I don't think he's as vocal of a leader necessarily as Jeff Bossa, but I think he's a tone setter. I think he's a culture guy. And I like this linebacking unit a lot, and it's going to look very different next year. Oregon has recruited this position pretty darn well. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in a portal guy at the very least for some depth, but they're going to be relying on young guys next year at this spot as of now. We'll see what happens in the offseason and such, but you're losing Boettcher, you're losing Jacobs, you're losing Jeff Bossa. You're going to bring back Devin Jackson, and that's great. I think he's ready to step in to be that primary linebacker because I like what he has done this year as well. I can make the case he's been the most steady guy in that linebacking unit. You'd probably say Boettcher. Bossa's only fluctuated really because of the injuries, but I think Devin Jackson is he has become what Dan Lanning said he had coming into this year, which is, he was a guy that was running around really fast, but wasn't always in the right positions. Now he feels like a guy that's running into the right spots. And that's what it looks like to me every week. And he is really good in coverage. He had that great coverage play on, I think it was a wide receiver. How many linebackers can run with a wide receiver all the way to the sideline that forced an incompletion on third down? It was a darn near perfect throw. It's probably the best throw that Braden Locke made all night. And yet it was an incomplete pass because Devin Jackson was running with him. Those sorts of plays are what he brought to the table on paper and on his high school film coming out of high school. And he was from the class of 2022. He's been around for a while, and I think he's really coming into his own. So I talk a lot about the defensive line. You see the secondary make these sorts of plays. I don't think the linebacking unit has always made the big, sexy, explosive turnover plays. They have at times. Jacobs had an interception, and Boettcher's actually dropped a couple because he dropped one at Oregon State as well. Got to get that glove up there. Did you know he plays baseball? But I think that unit should not be overlooked. Like if I had to grade them for the whole year, I'd say they're probably a B plus. I think they have been really, really solid. And there could be a point next year where we look back and go, gosh, remember when they still had this guy in the linebacking core? And they're still trying to work those new guys in. So I think the linebackers have done a good job. I'd give them a B plus. How would you grade the linebackers? Well, I don't know how you would do it. That's why you let me know in the comments section or hit me up on Twitter as always. Got some recruiting nuggets. Got some recruiting nuggets. One of which is not exactly what you'd want to hear necessarily. Someone's coming after one of our guys. That's coming up next. First, let's talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long with Prize Picks. It's the best place to get that real money action. Why do you think 10 million people have joined? There are 10 million users. Why? Because they know that Prize Picks is the place to be. And Prize Picks now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's downloading the Prize Picks app, using the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly. Instantly, not later, instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks is the place to go for daily fantasy. Prize Picks, run your game. So Oregon's two highest rated players in the class of 2025 are number 1 wide receiver and top 10 overall player DeCorian Moore from Duncanville High School, who seems to catch a highlight touchdown reel from the Alabama quarterback commit. I never remember his name. He's really good though, obviously. And DeCorian Moore helps make him look good. He seems to do that every single week. That's Oregon's highest rated player, according to 24/7. The second highest rated player is Dallas Wilson. So I have heard rumblings upon the grapevine, as they say, that Florida is pushing hard after Dallas Wilson. Now, he is from the Tampa area. So as of now, Oregon's pitch to him is, hey, come play football for the Ducks. Yeah, we're really far away, but Oregon is awesome. We'll make you feel right at home. And what I have been told is that Florida's pitched to him is, do you really want to go that far? Is that where you went? Look, Oregon's a great program and everything, but boy, it's a long ways away. And some guys want to be homebodies. Some guys don't want to stray that far. I went to college out of state. A lot of people didn't want to do that because they'd rather be closer to home. I get it. Home is great. I go home all the time. I go home every summer. Well, at least for the last couple of summers. But for the foreseeable future, I'll go back home to Oregon every summer. So I understand where they're coming from there and how that could supersede the quality of football program you're going to play for. Because Florida, though they are definitely improved on the football field in the second half of this year, they're the best 5-5 team in the country. That's a pitch. That's a pit. They could be better than 5-5 to get an easier schedule, which certainly they will next year. But do they feel as close to winning a national championship as Oregon? No, they do not. But there are a lot of factors that go into a recruitment. I hope we all know and understand that by now. It's not just, wait, why would that guy go to that team over there when Oregon's doing all these great things? Well, they've got nice facilities too. They've got a recruiter on staff who's dynamite and builds really good relationships. And Billy Napier has been a good recruiter. Now, this has not been crystal balled by someone like Steve Wiltfong, for instance, who was correct predicting the flip of Vander Plug from Washington to Oregon. And I just bring that up because anytime a crystal ball is wrong, all I hear in the comments are, crystal balls are worthless. People don't know what they're talking about. They're going off bad intel, blah, blah, blah. But when crystal balls are right, crickets. It reminds me a lot of what I deal with on Locked On College Football. When I'm wrong, Spencer, you were just hating on our team. You're just such a fool. You don't understand what you're talking about. But then when I'm right, crickets. That's the way it goes. So I don't know where exactly the lean is right now. I do have it on good authority that the push for Dallas Wilson is incredibly real. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind here. Number one, the in-state factors I brought up. But number two is that though it doesn't appear as direct as it once did when he initially announced he was leaving Texas, former 5-star receiver in the class of 2023, Jonte Cook, did once upon a time, I believe he has since removed it, make his Instagram bio a picture of him in some Oregon gear. You make of that whatever you will. But the calculation for the Oregon staff, Junior Adams, and everybody else is if we bring in Dallas Wilson, is he someone that immediately pushes for playing time to the point where, yeah, we can't bring in Jonte Cook anymore? And Jonte's been in college for 2 years already. He hasn't played a lot. That's why he's leaving Texas. He wants to see the football. He'd like to have the ball come his way. He wants to be higher up along the rotation. If we bring in Dallas Wilson, who's a 5-star wide receiver and the number one wideout in the Florida area, which, as I'm sure we all know, is a hotbed for recruiting. There are a lot of talented kids down there. Is that going to present a conflict? Would Dallas Wilson come in and be willing to sit behind you and not play for a season? Because, I mean, you look at Jerrion Dickey, who was a 4-star wideout, got the bump up to a 5-star status. Here we are in his second season, and he's got I think one catch in his Oregon career. Now, he battled injury in his first season, but he has been passed by someone in Justice Lowe, who was a lower-rated recruit coming out of high school, but Lowe is playing his third season of college football. And Dickey, with the injury last year, is essentially playing his first. So that calculation back and forth, I imagine is going to be in play here for Oregon. If you see Dallas Wilson flip to Florida, which is, again, not guaranteed. I just know that the push is very real. I think Miami's been after him as well, but Florida, I think, would be the leader to flip him in the run-up to signing day, which is about a month away. If he flips to Florida, watch out for Jonte Cook. That's the back-and-forth go-between that I'm really interested to see play out. Oregon has a really talented wide receiver room. Not just now, but next year. And the year after that. Because remember, 5-star Gatlin Bear is on a mission right now. He's coming in 2026. And I know that's thinking way into the future and such. But I'm just pointing out that the talent acquisition is incredibly strong at this position. I think next year, Jeremiah McLaughlin could be a stud. Jerion Dickey could pop. Kyler Casper could have a role. Like, there are a lot of options. It's just a question of how those options work their way up the depth chart. Because there's just going to be so much turnover. You're losing minimum 3 receivers. Minimum. Tez Johnson, Trayshawn Holden, Gary Bryant Jr. could technically come back. Evan Stewart could technically come back. I'd be hard-pressed to see both of them returning to Oregon next year. One of them, maybe. Maybe. That's entirely possible. Both of them, gosh, the odds feel really slim. So that's the recruiting nugget. And then DeCorian Moore took a visit a couple weeks ago to Alabama LSU, and LSU got housed by Bama, so roll tide roll, I guess. But I have not heard anything that DeCorian Moore is anywhere close to flipping. So all is quiet on the Western Front there. I'll end with this mailbag question from Major Wave, a hypothetical, which can be fun. And also reflective of how I feel about a particular position right now. If you had to replace one player on the offensive and defensive side of the ball with a player from the past, who would it be and why? On the offense, I'm going with Shane Lemieux at guard to replace Strother for obvious reasons. Well, I don't think Nishad Strother deserved that particular shot. Would I bring back a guard? Yeah. I'd probably bring back Jackson Powers Johnson, though. Like, can we just agree that's the best interior Oregon offensive lineman while he was with the Ducks of my lifetime? And maybe, there are some great ones out there, so I'm not going to make a definitive statement about all time, but, come on, guy wins the Remington Award. We've had some great centers come through Oregon. None of them came as close as, I don't even know if there had been a finalist before. I could be wrong on that. I did not double check before making such a statement, but Max Unger was really good. Hronis Grasu was really good. I think Grasu might have been a finalist, and deservedly so. He was phenomenal. Jake Hansen was good, but JPJ, that's the guy I'd bring back, because what I'm seeking is stability on the interior of Oregon's offensive line. Nobody brings that like JPJ. He could play guard. He could play center. He's starting for the Las Vegas Raiders right now, and they're not any good. I don't think that's his fault. It's just that, they're the Raiders, and yeah, they have Antonio Pierce as their head coach. I can't believe it's not working out. I'm completely and utterly shocked. So I wouldn't replace one guy in particular. I'd just bring him into the room and say, let's figure out the rotations now. That's where I go with, because I don't think one guard has necessarily stood head and shoulders above the rest, which is why they've all played. They all played last week. We saw Davey Uli, Nishad Strother, Kavika Rogers. They all played last week. And I think that's because they're all on pretty similar footing. So JPJ on offense, and then on defense, got to make a change to someone on defense. I'm a sucker for Javon Holland always. Brandon Johnson's been really good. Brandon Johnson's been great. But is anybody as good as Javon Holland at that nickel position? Probably not. So I still might say Verone McKinley, because I think you have enough hitters in the secondary. Taishim is a guy that makes tackles and plays around the line of scrimmage a lot, to where Kobe Savage, and look, he had a great game against Maryland, does some good things in coverage. I still don't think that he's a super rangy guy in the passing game over the top. That long ball that Wisconsin hit on Dante Manning, that ball hung in the air for a long time. And I just thought, boy, is someone going to get over? No, he didn't get there. Dante got beat off the line of scrimmage, and Kobe wasn't over there in time. So maybe a Verone McKinley or a John Boyette, flip a coin and take either one of those guys. But frankly, I'd go with 2 interior offensive linemen before I went with anyone on defense, because why would you change anything? If it ain't broke, don't fix it on defense. They're just awesome. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.